All right, so here we are. What is motility? So, this is something else that we treat every day in our practice. Uh, Motility is the natural motion that the organs inside your body does, which is indicative of how healthy it is. And the thing is, those organs need more than motility, they also need mobility. So, what is mobility? Mobility is the ability for that organ in question to move out of the way and or move around in relationship to the organs around it, so that, for example, you can bend forward and put on your socks, tie your shoes, um, or for example, that they can also move in a way so that you can reach up and reach for your favorite china that's up on the shelf in your dining room because guests are coming over. So, in a nutshell, in summary, that is motility and mobility. And how does all this stuff come around? Well, it actually all starts at the time that you were at 4 weeks after you conceived. 4 weeks after you were conceived, while you're in your mother's womb, you started to the cells in your body start to go what's called gastrulation. And what gastrulation at the time of gastrulation, the cells in your body has separated into uh, ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. These are the three layers of the embryonic human system that differentiate into, for example, ectoderm will differentiate eventually into skin and nerves. Mesoderm will differentiate into everything else. And the endoderm will differentiate into your digestive system or your GI tract. And here I drew a picture of what the endoderm or how these different tissues in your body will look like. So you're in your mother's womb, and and they took an MRI, and so they look at a chopped half of your body. And so this is your body. Let's say this is the liver. Let's say this is the stomach, kidney, and the spleen. Let's just say, okay. And at 4 weeks, and at 4 weeks gastrulation, your stomach, your stomach does a 90-degree clockwise turn. And because that stomach does a 90-degree clockwise turn, it takes the liver and it swings it towards the right. And in this example, it takes the kidney and spleens and swings it towards the left. And so, as a result of this swinging, at 4 weeks gastrulation, what happens is these organs will want to stretch back to where they were midline to the body. But because the stomach has swung 90 degrees, kind of like a balloon's tethered to a string to your wrist, that string here will swing that liver back to the right, and the kidney and spleen to the left, and the stomach will stay 90 degrees swung to clockwise, and so these organs will kind of do this motion like this. Okay, and as you started to develop into human being, these organs will tend to stay where they're at, but the motion keeps going. And that motion creates what's called the motility motion. And so now we're looking at you as someone who's born and grown into a child and into adult. And in children and adults, for motility motion, there's two phases of motion. Hopefully, you can see this. Uh, Sorry, I have to do a different color, but it's in red. And it does two motions. The first motion is what's called inspire. The second motion is what's called expire. Inspire motion is the motion of the organ that moves away from the midline. In other words, it's also known as kind of like the expansion phase, if you will. The expire motion is the movement of that organ back towards the midline. And another way to explain expire is that it's the contraction phase. So in this example of the liver would do an inspire, a movement away from the midline, also known as the expansion phase. And then the expire movement for the liver would be the movement back towards the midline and or the contraction phase. And and so for the organs in our body, when we in total potential, when we evaluate these organs, we do what's called a local listening, where we put our hand on the organ in question and we listen to what it has to say. And what we're listening for, what it has to say is, it does it like inspire or it does it like expire. How we know it likes inspire, for example, when we put our hand on the liver, when that liver swings away from the midline, we give that liver a nudge away from the midline. If it feels like, wow, it can even do more, is very likely an inspire lesion. An inspire lesion away from midline means there's inflammation. In this case, inflammation of the liver. And the reason why inspire lesion is indicative of inflammation is because inflammation brings water, more water to that area, and water is incompressible. So that means as that liver was swinging into inspire and then back into expire, back to inspire and expire. When it contracts back towards the midline, it hits those water molecules and it can't finish that expire. So that liver is nudged into inspire. And then over time, that liver kind of lives in that inspire. And so that's how we know that liver is has an inspire lesion. The other way, of course, is expire. So we have our hand on the liver and we're listening, we're following and listening that liver going back towards the midline. And now that as that liver goes back towards the midline, when it gets towards the end of that midline, we give it a little nudge. So we give it a nudge this way. And if it feels like it loves going further into expire, we know that liver has what's called an expire lesion. And when there's expire lesion, there's something going on with that liver that's not healthy. That's functionally not healthy. It's the vitality of it is not right. And so what we will do is actually we'll hold that into expire, and we will listen to the body, uh, and then listen to the body. The body will tell us what is likely a significant contributing factor as to why that liver is not happy. And so our other hand may be drawn to other parts of the body that say this is the area that will help that liver fully resolve that expire. so, and so going back, we have for motility, we have inspire, expire, and if it really loves going inspire, we know that in this case the liver has an inspire lesion, which means inflammation. If that liver loves going back toward midline, that liver has what's called an expire lesion, and usually means something's going on with that liver that's not happy, and there's a friend near it or that connected to it that's making it unhappy. Another way to diagnose an inspire lesion, expire lesion is, let's say the liver has an inspire lesion. We take that liver further into inspire. It likes it to go. It likes to go in that direction, but let's double check by via cluster. So we're going to follow that liver going back towards expire, and we're going to give it a nudge. If it feels like it hits a barrier into expire, and it loves to go into inspire, that's a confirmation that yes, there's an inspire lesion. And of course, the opposite is true. If the liver goes to expire, we give a nudge and loves going to expire, but we say, let's cluster this with more listening. So we're going to come off of the end range expire. We're going to follow that liver to inspire, and we give it a nudge into inspire, and it feels like it hits a barrier. Then we can confirm that that liver has an expire lesion. So when we're evaluating the organs in the body, we have what's called restrictions and adhesions. What do this mean? So restriction means that that liver does not have has a motility lesion, okay, and it has a mobility lesion. So how do we know if a liver has mobility lesion? Well, We put our hand on the liver, let's say as an inspire lesion. So we follow that into expansion phase. It loves going there. Okay. And then we take our hand off the liver and we're going to hold on to the liver and we're going to follow that liver into the inspire pattern. And then, okay, manually kind of move it inspire and we're going to move it into expire. And it feels like it's restricted in three-dimensional manner, meaning that liver cannot glide down towards the feet, it cannot internally rotate, and it cannot roll into flexion. Okay, and it feels like it hits barrier in those planes. Then we know that liver also uh, has a mobility problem, meaning now we're holding on to that liver and it doesn't like to go there. So that's how we know that in this case, the liver has a restriction. Now, sometimes we may do a liver may have an inspire lesion, but when we hold on to that liver and we mobility test that liver into uh, a, a tilt, a glide down towards the feet, internal rotate, and flex it. And it feels like it can move there. Okay, it has a range of motion and it can go there. And maybe it's nice and springy and elastic at end range, and then we double check our work and we take that liver and we glide it up towards the head, external rotate and extend that, and it feels the quality feels the same. Then we know that liver has good mobility. However, based on our evaluative listening, the liver still has an inspire lesion and so it has a motility problem. And so in this case, the liver would have an adhesion. Ultimately, as we treat out this liver, meaning we improve the mobility and we improve the motility after we improve the mobility, then we know that we have a pretty happy liver. In that case, we have no restrictions, no adhesions, which means the mobility is okay and the motility is okay. And that is how we evaluate and treat the motility of the organs inside the body.